You are Locked On Mets POSTCAST. Part of Locked On Sports New York on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Mets fought back once again, but tonight it was not enough as the Phillies take a wild and crazy and chaotic Game 2 to even up the series at 1. Welcome into this edition of the Locked On Mets Postcast. I am your host, Chris Schubert, and I think we all need a little bit of a deep breath after what we just went through over the last couple of hours, and that's playoff baseball at its finest, and we will break it down, all the different angles, the sixth inning, the decision to bring in Diaz, the Mark Vientos game, and then what happened in the bottom of the ninth as the Phillies walk it off to even the series at 1. But this episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And you can't help but feel like it was a gut punch to lose this game. You had a 3-0 lead in this game. You took a 4-3 lead in this game. You had the ninth inning comeback to make it 6-6, and you thought extra innings could potentially be on the table, but the New York Mets gave it up. The bullpen gave it up specifically in this one, and this series is even going back to Citi Field on Tuesday. But for anybody that is not a Mets or a Phillies fan, you probably enjoyed that. You probably had a great time. But for us in this circle, that was stressful. That was a roller coaster of emotions. That was a lot in just one game. And the Mets got after it early. Mark Vientos, who had a massive game today, the youngest major league player to have 3 extra base hits in a postseason game in National League history. It delivered early with a 2-0 home run. And the Mets, for the first time in what feels like a really long time, got out to the early lead. It had been the shoe on the other foot for a change, where the Mets were the team out in front. The Mets were the team playing from a position of strength, not having to come back the way that it had been the case throughout this entire week, the entire run really up until this point here in Game 2. They get out to an early lead at 2-0, and it's playoff baseball. You know how this goes. So you're watching this game and you're thinking to yourself, the Mets need some extra insurance. The Mets need an extra run or two to push them in front, to give them that little extra cushion so that you could feel a little bit better about the way Carlos Mendoza was going to have to manage the bullpen and get himself through the back part of this game. Well, he got it in the form of a Pete Alonso opposite field home run that made it 3-0. And I don't want to say it was calm. I don't want to say it was, that sigh of relief. It wasn't, but at 3-0, you feel a little bit better about how you're choosing to handle things, because now a bloop and a blast, which this team is very good at doing, doesn't beat you. It requires multiple hits. They have to string together 3, 4, maybe even 5 hits to draw even in this game, and you felt a little bit comfortable. And then Luis Severino sees this lineup for the third time around, and so that's where we'll head now, the 6th inning of this game, because Severino pitched really well through the first 5 innings, really had this lineup flustered. Would have liked to have seen him use his changeup a little bit more. Didn't use it a ton, but you saw the uptick in the velocity in this game. He sat way higher than he normally does. The sinker, the four-seamer, all up from his yearly average. His four-seamer was up over 1.2 miles per hour on average, higher than it was during the season. His sinker had even a little bit more juice. The slider had more juice. Everything had more juice tonight. So the adrenaline definitely pumping for Luis Severino over the first 5 innings. And then he sees the lineup for the third time there in the 6th inning. And that's where this game starts to go sideways for the New York Mets, because you feel like you're in cruise control. You feel like Sevy's battling, Sevy's dealing. He's putting up zeros for us. We got a cushion. We've got 3 innings. And I think the scenario was pretty clear of what was going to happen. You were going to see Severino go 6, maybe go into the 7th if he felt comfortable, but get through 6. They were going to hand it off to Budo, who didn't pitch yesterday, ask Budo for probably 6 outs like they normally do when they bring him into the game, and then it was going to be Diaz in the 9th. That felt like the plan. That felt like what Carlos Mendoza wanted to do, especially with Budo being the first guy that came up afterwards. But Harper hits the 2-run homer. Castellanos hits the next pitch, and it's 3-3. Okay, not great, unideal. You took a huge counterpunch from the Phillies, the way you have been counterpunching the entire playoffs, or at least the last week. But all that, it's a tie game. It's a tie game. You're getting into the bullpens. This is where this team has thrived as of late. You felt really good about the way things were going with your at-bats. You felt like your bullpen was relatively healthy. You knew you were going to have Diaz right away in this game, no matter the situation. And then immediately, like they always do, like they have done this entire run, in immediate response. 3-3, the bank's going crazy. They tie the game. They got to Sevy. It was a complete role reversal from the day before where, Wheeler was pitching great, and then the Mets got to the bullpen. Sevy was pitching great. Then the Phillies were able to get to him, tie game. They have all the momentum. And then the Mets snatch the momentum right away from them. Snatch it right back with Brandon Nimmo hitting a go-ahead home run to make it 4-3. And then this is where things go sideways for the Mets. And this is where Carlos Mendoza was put into a really bad spot, where things became more challenging as a manager. It is a tough thing to have to navigate over the course of a baseball game, especially in the playoffs, especially in this type of environment. And he made the decision, after Jose Budo struggled a little bit, to go to Edwin Diaz to get a bunch of outs. And then there was a bit of a downfall there for Edwin Diaz. So we will talk about the decision to bring in Edwin Diaz and Diaz struggling in that game on the other side. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Elly De La Cruz rookie card just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they will immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB, code LockedOnMLB for 10% off your first purchase. See Yuki in the chat saying, "What's up? Bad loss. Sevy falls off the cliff." Yeah, I mean, you have him face this lineup a third time and it goes sideways. Probably should have gone to the bullpen a little bit earlier, but with the way Sevy was cruising, I could very much see the argument for bringing him out to try to get 3 more outs into the 6th inning. And then Yuki adds, Mets hit 4 home runs today. The pitching was bad. And let's get into the pitching, and appreciate you all being here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel, where we go live after each and every game here in the New York market. Pulled double duty today. Did the Jets game earlier today when they took on the Minnesota Vikings in London. So if you're a Jets fan, I got you covered on that side of things. And then obviously after each and every Mets game, and we'll have these the rest of this postseason run. So we're back at it again on Tuesday after game 3 of this series back at Citi Field. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and turn on that notification bell. Let's get into the pitching being bad, and where it started to kind of go sideways was with Edwin Diaz. So Diaz comes in, gets that out in the 7th. Is able to get Schwarber on the check swing, clearly went around. And then the question became, all right, how much are you going to ask of Edwin Diaz? And the broadcast brought this up. They talked about, are they going to ask Edwin Diaz to get 7 outs? Are they going to ask him? I don't think that was the plan. And maybe somebody will ask Carlos Mendoza. 40 things happened after that decision and after the Phillies, took the lead with the Bryson Stott 2-run triple. So I don't know if that's going to come up over the course of the media conversation of how long truly would Edwin Diaz have gone if he got those 3 outs in the 8th inning. But he gets the out of Schwarber. You then bring him out to face the top of the lineup. And this is where there is a blend of the old school and the new school. And I love the move. I didn't have any problem with the move. It didn't matter what the outcome was. It was the right move to bring in Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz is the closer of this baseball team. Edwin Diaz is the guy, because he's in that role, that the New York Mets, Carlos Mendoza, the team, the coaches, the front office, the organization believes is their best reliever. You put somebody in the closer role, you think they are your best reliever. They are the guy you want to get the last 3 outs of these games to shut it down and to lock up a victory for you. When it comes to the postseason, the usage changes because you're not managing 162. You're managing game by game. I have to win this game. I can't worry about tomorrow. I can't worry about next week like you do over the course of a 162-game season. So in this spot, with that part of the lineup coming up, it's why he brought him in to face Schwarber. And then after that, it's Turner, Harper, Castellanos. There is not going to be a more important moment of the game than a 4-3 lead for the New York Mets with those three guys coming up. If Edwin Diaz gets through that part of the lineup, if he gets those three guys, you are then facing the bottom part of the Phillies lineup. You're facing Stott, Realmuto, and Brandon Marsh in the ninth inning to win the game. That is the lane. Those three guys, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, that you have to get. And there's nobody you want in that spot other than your best reliever. And Edwin Diaz is the New York Mets' best reliever. Unfortunately, tonight, he didn't have it. He did not have the command of the fastball. The slider was a little bit too snappy. He got Schwarber on a good one, but it was snapping a little bit outside. He was missing that outside part of the plate with that slider. He tried to have a couple backdoor ones to try to strike out the lefties. And you got to give credit to this Phillies team, right? And I know we don't want to do it. We don't like the Phillies. We want to win the series, but they have a good lineup. And Turner, Harper, and Castellanos are going to cause problems for you. They are going to be the toughest part of the lineup. You have to have Diaz get those three outs. Tonight, he didn't get those three outs. It's as simple as that. And so Bryson Stott hits the 2 RBI triple to make it 5-4. And then they get the most important run of the game, I think, other than the one that walked it off for them. They get the insurance run on the ground out where Vientos bobbles it. That makes it 6-4. And that changes everything because that impacts the way the ninth inning goes down after Mark Vientos hits the home run. So I don't have a problem with the decision. I don't have an issue with going to Diaz. It was the right move. It's the right call. He's your best reliever. You have to get those three outs. He has to come in and get those guys out if you want a chance to win the game, because the hope is you get those three guys out. There's a bit of a boost in that dugout. You're able to get some insurance runs. And now all of a sudden, it is not as high leverage of a situation there in the ninth because you maybe have a 5-3, a 6-3, 7-3 lead because you were able to put some insurance runs over the plate. So don't have a problem going to Diaz in that spot. Diaz just has to come through. Just he has to. And unfortunately, recently, he has not had, I think, his best stuff. He has not had his A+ stuff. And that is something to keep an eye on here going forward. And the Phillies then take the lead, obviously 6-4, and then they turn over to Matt Strahm in the top of the ninth. And the New York Mets, man, I wish it was under different circumstances, right? I wish we could talk about what Lindor and Vientos did in the top of the ninth because the Mets won and they took a 2-0 series lead and they're going back to Citi Field with a chance to win one game at home to move on. But I just don't think we can put into words what this New York Mets team has done this week. Because even though they lost tonight, they did it again. They did it twice in this game tonight. Brandon Nimmo with the immediate response after the 3 spot from the Phillies, and then immediately in the top of the ninth, after there's one out with the game on the line, Mark Vientos hits a game-tying 2-run home run to make it 6-6. It's unbelievable. We kind of predicted it. We said we felt like Mark Vientos was due for a big breakout performance, and he has delivered over these first 2 games. And again, the youngest player in National League history to have 3 extra base hits in one singular postseason game. Mark Vientos, the 2-run home runs, and he also had, I believe it was a double in this game. So those were the 3 extra base hits that he was able to put together. And it's unbelievable. A kid that is that young, a kid that spent the first month of the year down in the minor leagues, has come up, has been this impactful, has provided this much power to this lineup, and is the number 2 hitter for a team that is in the National League Divisional Series and is thriving in that role right now. 3 for 4 tonight with the 4 RBIs and comes through with a just clutch home run to make it 6-6. And then you go to the bottom of the ninth, and then the big question is, what are you going to do? Who's the guy you're going to turn to? And I did not mind that they continued to go with Tylor Megill. He got the outs that were required in the 8th inning on just 10 pitches. You already had him up. And I think, and this is me guessing, but my assumption, we talked about it earlier, that I didn't think the plan was going to be for Edwin Diaz to get 7 outs in this game, that I thought it was going to be 4 and then somebody else was going to get the 3. I think it was going to be Megill because they had him up with Edwin Diaz earlier. So I think the plan was, okay, Diaz, you get these really high leverage 4 outs for us in this part of the lineup in this critical juncture. And then we'll be able to maybe get some runs across. But either way, we can go to Tylor Megill in the bottom of the ninth if things hold at 4-3 or if we get insurance runs. That's what I think the plan was. I think the plan was to use Megill in that spot, especially because he immediately went to him after things went sideways for Edwin, and that he put him out there for the bottom of the ninth in a tie game. So it felt like that was what was going to be the plan. And unfortunately, the Philadelphia Phillies in that same part of the lineup that we talked about in the 6th inning and in the 7th inning, that you had to get. You had to get those guys out. They came back up, and Castellanos, even there with with 2 outs, Tylor got the first 2 outs of the inning, were not able to get out Harper, not able to get out Castellanos, and the Philadelphia Phillies walk it off and win 7-6. And it's a gut punch. It is a gut punch in every sense of the word for the Mets to battle back as many times as they did tonight and fall. But the New York Mets are going to go home, and they're going to have an opportunity to win 2 games at home to try to win this series and move on to the NLCS. Chaos, a series of absolute chaos. We will wrap up this edition of the Locked On Mets postcast with just maybe if there are any thoughts still up here, I kind of dumped them all to you as we've gone on, but maybe we'll get into some more stuff and what ultimately this might look like the rest of the way. So we will do that here on the other side. This episode of the Locked On Mets postcast brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competition stadium cuisine. Luckily on Booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that's just right for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choices across the U.S., you can go incognito to all your baseball rival cities. Booking.com delivers the right stay for you, and they can help you book a stay that's close to your home teams or rival stadium. No matter what team you are rooting for this postseason, Booking.com can make you a fan of any U.S. city. From hotels that overlook stadiums to family-friendly resorts to cute bed and breakfast stays, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. FanDuel, talked about it a bunch here on the show. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 wager. That's FanDuel.com. Make sure you are tapped into the Locked On Mets podcast in the podcast feed. Ryan Finkelstein will also have thoughts from what was a roller coaster of emotions here in this divisional round, specifically in today's game. So make sure you're subscribed there as well. And if you are listening to us in the podcast feed and you're already a daily listener of Ryan, why don't you come and join us? We are live after each and every one of these Mets games, breaking it all down, giving my thoughts and hearing from you as well on these postcasts. And look, I try to be the eternal optimist. The New York Mets were not going to sweep their way to wherever this run was going to go, right? They were going to drop baseball games, and that's the way playoff baseball goes. And the Mets, unfortunately, did not come through tonight. And Matt in the chat right now says this one is on Diaz. And yes, you can trace it back to that moment where the Mets respond, have a lead. They turn to their best reliever in the most important spot of the game, and he doesn't come through. And I wish there was an easier thing to say. I wish we didn't have the concern of our closer not coming through in a big moment. But you know what? I also saw a team that for the first time in this series, and it's not the first time this week, they've done it a bunch, but they delivered the counterpunch, and then they got counterpunched back, and then they were able to respond. So if we're going to be the eternal optimist here on the show, the New York Mets delivered a counterblow, then took another counterblow, and then responded. So normally this team has responded, and it's been the only response other than Monday against the Braves, right? Where they responded, the Braves immediately responded, and then the Mets had to do it again. They hadn't been in that spot. They had delivered the counterblow to Milwaukee. They delivered the counterblow in game 1, and that was it. They responded, and then they had control. This one, they took control and then gave it away and then had to regain it back, and they did. And so that's the thing that I would be encouraged by. I would be encouraged by the team finding some power, right? Mark Vientos hitting 2 home runs. Brendan Nimmo finding the power stroke. Pete Alonso with his second home run of the postseason. Those are things that I would be an optimist about. I would be an optimist about the New York Mets won a road game. Your priority as the team that only gets the 2 home games, you got to win a road game at some point if you're going to win a best-of-5 series. The Mets did their job. They did it in game 1. They had a opportunity tonight to take a commanding 2-0 series lead. There's a reason why the Philadelphia Phillies won the National League East. There's a reason why they got to bye here into this round of the playoffs. There's a reason why they get 3 home games. You got to go out there and take it from them. And they did in game 1. They kind of left them off the hook here in game 2, but it is all square. It is even. The Phillies had to do all that work tonight and had to do all of that magic to just even up the series. And so that would be my message if I was in that clubhouse, if I was in that locker room, if I was Carlos Mendoza and I was talking to this team, that would be my message, is they had to do all of that just to even it up. And now we get to go back to our place. We get to finally play in front of our crowd. We've been doing all of this on the road, doing it in Atlanta, doing it in Milwaukee, doing it now in Philadelphia. We now get to go home and get the opportunity to play in front of the best baseball fans in the world and give them a show. And you don't think those guys are going to be amped up to finally get a game at home? You don't think Citi Field is going to bring the noise, going to bring the electricity for the first postseason game in 2 years? And the last time the Mets had a postseason game at home, it was a Game 3 loss to the Padres. There's going to be some energy. There's going to be some excitement in that building. So that would be the eternal optimist, right? And we mentioned Matt's comment in the chat about this one being on Diaz. Yes, that would be one of the negatives, is Diaz struggling. I'm not going to go after Tylor Megill. He has to execute, but it's a tough spot. It's a tough lineup. You got to make pitches. He's in a different role. It is what it is. That was the situation that the Mets found themselves in because they used Budo and Diaz. And at that point, I think you were asking Tylor Megill for some length, try to get you into extra innings, and then probably be your closer in the bottom of the 10th or the bottom of the 11th, however long it goes. And Matt says, still achieve the goal of getting a split in Philly as much as this one hurts. Yes. And that should be the message. That should be the takeaway. Tonight hurts. Tonight is not fun. Tonight was not good. The New York Mets left an opportunity on the table to take a commanding 2-0 series lead. They're not down in the series. They're not facing elimination in Game 3. They have shown through 2 games they can go toe-to-toe with the Philadelphia Phillies. They have shown for 2 games they are on an even playing field with the Philadelphia Phillies. They can match that team blow for blow. Their lineup just as good as the Phillies lineup. Their bullpen just as good as the Phillies bullpen. Their rotation just as good. They can keep up with this Philadelphia Phillies team. They can beat this Philadelphia Phillies team. They beat them in Game 1, and they were beating them multiple times in tonight's game. So, again, I get it. That doubt can start to creep in that they lost tonight. And I am not going to sugarcoat them blowing this game tonight and blowing an opportunity to be up 2-0. It happens. But you know what? If the New York Mets are not going to be able to get high leverage outs from Edwin Diaz, they're not going to go far in the postseason. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Edwin Diaz is going to show up like that every single time out in these key spots. It doesn't matter what the Mets do offensively. It is not going to matter what they get from their rotation. If their closer, if their highest leverage reliever is going to put up performances like that, it doesn't matter. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think you're going to see that from Edwin Diaz the next time out. I think you're going to see him be inspired and bring out an inspired effort for this team in a key spot, in a key juncture. But we have to be put into that spot. The team has to put themselves into that spot, and they get to go home and play a Game 3 at home, and they get at least 2 games at Citi Field. And again, we turn the page, and the New York Mets are now going to play a best of 3 with the Philadelphia Phillies, and 2 of those 3 are going to be at Citi Field. Would you sign up for that? If I would have presented that to you before the series, before Game 1, before you knew anything, before you saw what they did against Wheeler, before you saw what they did tonight, people listening live on YouTube, on the Lock On Sports New York YouTube channel, those of you listening in the podcast feed right now, would you have taken a 1-1 series split, going home and absolutely having 2 of 3 games, having 2 of the next 3 at home, needing to win 2 of 3 to go on? You have a best of 3 series, 2 of 3 are at home. You have completely erased the advantage that the Phillies have in terms of home field. You take care of business at Citi Field, the New York Mets will be going to the National League Championship Series. It's that simple. You would have signed up for that before the series started. So no complaints about that being the situation the Mets currently find themselves in. But you can be disappointed with them losing tonight. You can be upset. You can be frustrated with them losing tonight because they left one. They left one out there. They left a win on the table. They left an opportunity to put this Phillies team under immense pressure. And trust me, that pressure would have grown. What would that would have been 4 straight losses at home dating back to last year in the postseason for the Phillies, the last 2 against the Diamondbacks, and then the first 2 here, then facing elimination. So that's what's on the table moving forward for the New York Mets. There's an opportunity to go up 2-1, to put the Phillies under the pressure of facing elimination for the next 2 games, being at home, forcing them to have to try to bring this series back to Philadelphia. That's what's in front of the Mets on Tuesday at Citi Field. It sucks. It's not fun. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, and I can see everybody in the chat, kind of already opening the door, or Falcons saying yes, but for some reason I feel like they will play worse at home. That team's going to be absolutely zoned in and locked in. They were down 6-4 in the top of the 9th in a hostile environment in Philly, and they responded. You don't think they're going to thrive off of that Citi Field crowd? If you don't think so, then you haven't been watching this team all year. They are going to thrive You saw how they thrived in that series against Philadelphia at home a couple of weeks ago. They're going to thrive at home, I think. I think they are at least going to split, and this is going to go to a game 5. I do not see them losing both at Citi Field, but we are going to save that for another time. We're going to save that for the next edition of the Locked On Mets postcast, which will be after game 3 of this series. So make sure you are locked in with us here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. Subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you are notified when we go live, and we will do so right after game 3 of the NLDS with Sean Manaea on the mound. Also, by the way, remind yourself of that. Sean Manaea, the ace of this staff, is going in a very important game 3. So that should get you excited as well. So we will be back to break all of that down after game 3. Appreciate everyone who has joined us here in the live YouTube chat. For those of you listening to us in the podcast feed, we appreciate you as well. A disappointing night for the New York Mets as this series is evened up, but it is 1-1 going back to Citi Field, and the New York Mets now hold home field advantage the rest of the way, and they are going to have to come through and deliver with that home field advantage. A disappointing night, but the New York Mets still alive in the postseason, still with games to play. So I understand the frustration. I understand the disappointment, but try to take that big picture view. Look at it as the New York Mets took care of business. They did what they needed to do. They won a road game in Philadelphia to take home field advantage from the Philadelphia Phillies. So that should be the lasting thing that you have. They have an off day tomorrow. They can flush this performance tonight and then get back at it again on Tuesday. And that's the next time we will be with you here on the Locked On Mets postcast. See you, everybody.